be judging you on your what you're eating for your dinner or anything like that at all. It's just so we can all sort of get together and share this sort of best practice idea. I'll get started. Some more people might come along, and Damon will add them in. Just to let you know, at the top of the chat, you'll see a link to a thing called a Padlet. That's a document I've put together to support tonight's webinar, to give you a few ideas. Sometimes it's easier to just look at a picture of something rather than me just waffling on about it. It's much easier to actually see how things are done in practice, isn't it? So I'll just introduce myself. My name's Kim, and I'm a childminder, and I'm also one of the experts and mentors for the childminding mentoring at the moment, and I'm also the childminding partner for the Stronger Practice Hub. And I'm joined by Lisa, who's a member of the Stronger Practice Hub as well. And so tonight, I should just tell you that it's being recorded. So if anyone has a problem with that, you can always pop out and not actually be live on it, and then just watch it later on YouTube when Damon uploads it. Please feel free to join in and to chat and everything. What I'm planning to do is talk about agency for about 20 minutes. And then I'm hoping that you've all come to this tonight with some ideas about how you support agency in your setting, so that we can share that sort of best practice idea with each other. So let's have a bit of a think about agency and what we mean by agency. It's a term that sometimes people do find a little bit confusing, but actually once I explain it, I think it will make total sense to you. For example, you have it, I have it. We have the choice of what to wear in the morning, what to have for our breakfast, where to go, who to spend our day with, what job we have. We have a choice of where we live usually, don't we, as well? Children don't have that, generally speaking. So agency is the ability to make decisions or choices that affect your life, sometimes in very small ways, sometimes in really big ways, like changing your job or moving house. But even very small things like learning, choosing which clothes to wear or what to have for breakfast, that's still agency, and it's still an important aspect of development that we can really enable really, really simply in our settings. Let's have a think. Excuse me while I refer to my notes, because I wrote this a few days ago and I've got to refer back to check, see what I've done. So alternative words that you might want to use instead of agency that might help it sort of sinking in a little bit are autonomy, influence, independence, all those sort of skills that we want children to have. We want the children in our care, don't we, to grow up to be resilient and confident and not afraid to try things out, and to be just confident, enabled adults when they eventually get to that stage. And it really supports children's mental health and adults' mental health if you have a sense of agency, a sense of control over your life. In whatever way we can make that happen. So generally speaking, when we think about children, they don't have very much agency over their day, do they? They don't have a choice over where they go or who they spend their day with, or what they wear sometimes, or what they're going to eat, or what they're going to play with, or what they're going to do that day. Now, as adults, we would find that quite difficult, wouldn't we? But if we can place ourselves in the children's shoes and think, how can I give the children choice and let them make decisions and just enable that type of independent thinking, we can really support agency. And it's just such an important thing. And as I say, it's really simple to do. So what have I got here? Agency supports confidence and resilience, and sort of enables a sense of respect for themselves and for others. And it gives children a sense of belonging and a feeling that they are respected and listened to, and that they are an important person in the setting, in their home, in their community, wherever it is. But we're obviously just talking about our settings here, aren't we? So even though the word agency, I think to some people can sound a little bit confusing, if you think of it as just letting children have a little bit of power over what happens to them during their day, and actually, um, if we can step back and allow that and enable it, it makes everything so much smoother, and it's so much better for children. So let's have a look at my next sheet, excuse me. We're going to think about practical ways we can enable agency. We can give children choice. So by that, I mean really simple things. That can be things like, which colour cup would you like? Which fruit are you going to have? Or if we're going to the shop, which fruit should we choose to buy? Are we choosing some biscuits? Who's going to choose the biscuits today? Which biscuits should we have for snack? That type of thing. Because as an adult, it's very easy to fall into that routine of the adult always telling the children what to do. But if you can share that decision making process with children, even over very small things, it really makes a difference. Things like, it's time to go outside. What would you like to wear, your shoes or your wellies? Give them the choice. It doesn't matter to us, does it, what they want to wear? Also, things like clothes, having choice over which clothes you're going to wear. This is something I do in my setting, which you'll see on the Padlet, is that each child has their own little shelf in the bathroom with their spare clothes in on the shelf. And they can go and change their clothes whenever they like. It doesn't matter. And some children, excuse me, want to change their clothes quite often. And actually, it's a really good skill to have anyway, because when they go off to school and have to change for PE and that type of thing, that's a skill they need to have. But also, like today is a good example. One child didn't like the leggings she was wearing. She went to her cupboard, went to her shelf, found some different leggings, changed them over. And it's good to have that sort of sense of power over your life and over your own decisions, rather than always relying on an adult, or an adult always making those decisions for you. And that's such a simple thing to do. All it needed to be was a few extra spare pairs of leggings on her shelf. You might all do things slightly differently, but that's just an example of how I do it. Also, things like, which book do you want to read? You choose the books. Children can choose the books rather than the adult choosing them. Which songs do you want to sing? Any of you that have come to my rhyme time sessions that I run at Wivenhoe Library will know that we use a song bag, which most of you I think will be familiar with, a song bag with little tiny song prompts in there, like a Humpty Dumpty and a star and a little boat for row your boat, or a little bus. And we pass it round the circle and the children choose their own song. This is a really good way to enable agency in a really simple way, because some children might not be able to verbalise which song they want to sing. They might not be able to remember what it's called. They just might not be able to tell you. Or you end up with the child next to you saying the same song as the one before, because it's hard for them to process that thought of what they might like to sing. But if they can look in the bag, look at all those different things and choose the one that means the most to them, then that's the one that we use. And that's really important, because it's their sense of ownership over that activity really supports this sense of agency as well. And again, this is so simple. It's just such a simple thing to do, isn't it? And with food, it's something that I do here. You might not be able to do that depending on whether you have packed lunches or anything like that, but you'll see on the Padlet that whenever possible, I do self-serving. So for instance, if we were having a shepherd's pie, I would make the shepherd's pie and put it in the middle of the table, and the children would serve themselves and then serve their own vegetables and that type of thing. That way, the children get to decide, do they want more carrots? Do they want more potato? It's their choice. And actually, I know as a practitioner and as a parent myself, the thought process is maybe that a child would only choose the foods they like. They only choose the carrots and they're never going to eat the shepherd's pie. But actually, you'd be pleasantly surprised when you try that they do actually try more things. And I found they eat quite a bit more actually as well, because they come back for second serving. Obviously, children sometimes need support with that. The older children, the 3 and 4 year olds, can manage, but the younger children do need a little bit of help. But even so, you can always offer them choice. you can always be the supporter rather than the person making the decision. So that's just a really helpful way to do that, and really simple as well. There's a picture of that on the Padlet as well that you'll see. Um, so then think about independence, because that's a really key thing, that we want children to be independent with their self-care skills, especially, don't we? It's really good from a safeguarding point of view and from a confidence point of view. Children need to be able to manage these things themselves. So we've got things like washing their own hands and cleaning their own teeth. Sometimes, obviously, the adult needs to be nearby to supervise, but you don't need to do these things for them. Even very, very young children can have a go at washing their hands, can't they? Using the toilet, again, depending on the child's development, you might be supporting them in some way, but really always getting towards the idea that the child is independent and respecting that their abilities are probably greater than we give them credit for, generally speaking. Things like wiping their own nose, 100% successful, but it's still something that children can do, and we can enable in a really simple way by just having a box of tissues nearby. And then when you feel that the child needs to wipe their nose, you can say, oh, I think it might be time for you to wipe your nose. Let the child do that themselves. You can always support it if it doesn't work 100%, but it's the idea again of the child having some agency over themselves and their bodies. There's the decisions about what they're going to do with their bodies. Another thing which I think goes really well with all of the networking sessions that we've been having is exploration and challenge. I think we are generally, I would say, moving into a less concerned about risk. We're enabling children to take more risk generally in early years, aren't we? And we are more open to that idea. But I think we can still go even further, can't we? We can let children climb things, maybe get stuck, and then work out how they're going to get back down. All those things really, really support resilience and a sense of confidence and a sense of I can do it, but also challenging themselves with their own ideas, thinking about ideas and trying them out, and they don't work, and they try again a different way, or they adjust whatever their sort of experimentation is. This is all really good agency supporting activities, because children can come up with these ideas. They don't need an adult to do them, and all we need to do is enable it by making sure the resources are available. So this is particularly important with things like loose parts. It's just really lends itself to this sense of agency, that children can select the resources they want. It's not prescribed by an adult. You're going to do this today, and this is what we're going to make, and we're all going to make the same thing. I think you'll see on the Padlet there's a few different things of children in my setting. One building a tower with cable reels, another one connecting up pipes to the water butt, and he found a bucket of chalk and was putting the chalk down the water. And that was his idea, and sometimes the chalk got stuck. I didn't say anything to him. I just let him do it. I was just observing and seeing how he was getting on. And sometimes it got stuck, and he worked out that if you put the tap on harder, it washed the chalk down the pipe. And that was his own idea. He sought all the resources himself. He put them together himself. And what a great sense of achievement that he was getting from this activity, rather than from an adult telling him what to do, or stepping in and making decisions for him, when he could do those things himself. So I would say, if possible, try and step back and let children have those moments of challenging themselves or coming up with their own ideas. I think that it's something we've done a lot, isn't it, with the loose parts sessions that we've been doing with Claire. And so I think you can all see what amazing learning opportunities there are from there. And that's all part of this agency, having choice, making their own decisions about what they're going to do with the resources. There's some pictures again on the Padlet taken at one of Claire's sessions of some children playing in a big box, and they've got sort of what to me would look like random objects in the box. It was actually a boat, and this was all the treasure they needed to be able to go off on their journey together. Um, it was their decision. They worked it out. They had to work out how to stick things in, where they were going to fit things around in the boat, but it was their choice. I could give them, I could enable that just by having those resources available for them. And the other thing we want to talk about really is social confidence, because it can be quite hard for children to, well, we all know as adults, don't we? Especially if you're in a group of 3 or 4 year olds, that they argue a lot. That's the only way to say it, really, isn't it? They disagree a lot. It's part of life. It's working out how relationships work and how to negotiate. Now, as an adult, it's really, really tempting to step in all the time and to solve that problem for them. But actually, we're not really helping if we do that. What we can do is a really simple thing, again, is to model ideas. And this is really frustrating for children at first, I find, when you try and do this. Instead of you instantly solving the problem, we can model by saying things like, oh, well, I wonder what would happen if, or I wonder if you could ask so and so, or I wonder how we could work this problem out. How could you speak to your friend? What could you say about this? And try and model ideas of how they can negotiate a conflict resolution, I think is the proper term, but that sounds like working at the UN, which I know it feels like that sometimes when you're in a room of young children. But do you understand what I mean? We don't have to be stepping in. We have to step back a little bit and let children solve these problems, because this supports them to feel confident and to feel that they are, again, listened to, that they've been able to work these problems out themselves. It's not healthy, really, in the long term to have someone always solving your problems for you, is it? The other thing I've put down here is rethink sharing, what we mean by sharing, because that's quite often the cause of a lot of conflict, isn't it? And really, if a child has an object and a resource, and another child comes along and says, I want to play with that. In the past, we would have said, oh, you've got to share. Sharing doesn't mean you instantly have to hand it over to the next person. Really, we need to be able to model how we can say to children, how could you work out when it can be your turn to have a go with that object? How can you work out how you can share that object between you so you both get a turn? And I think if you can do that, if you can sort of get into the routine of doing that rather than trying to get children to share like instantly, then it really does support that sort of conflict resolution. And you can hear them saying to each other, can I have a turn when you're finished, please? Which is a much easier way to do it. And then it gives the child who's got the object that agency to decide when they're finished with it and when they can pass it over. And it's a much calmer way to deal with conflict resolution. The last little bit I wanted to say was about respect and trust. So this is something we all need. We all want to feel respected, don't we? And you can do this by giving children sort of choices, respecting their choices about what they want and what they're going to do, but also we can trust them. Children are much more capable than really we give them credit for. So you can give them meaningful tasks or ask them if they'd like to take part in meaningful tasks. So things like setting the table with you, carrying bags for you, and using real objects. So anyone who's been to my setting, and I'm sure other settings do this as well, will know that we have little china cups, they're little cappuccino cups actually, or espresso cups, but they look like little teacups. So that at lunchtime or meal times, we have these little cups and the children have little jugs of water. We use real cutlery, we use china plates, that type of thing. Respecting children and showing them that we trust them. We trust that they can use those objects safely and that they understand how to use them safely. And I think if you can do that, you'd be surprised at actually how well children can manage those things, because we've given them the respect and the trust to be able to do that. And that also supports this sense of sense of agency, that I'm a worthwhile person, I have worth, and people respect me and I belong in this setting, and I have confidence in my own abilities because they've trusted me to carry these things, or they've trusted me to use this plate, you know. I think that's what we all probably want, isn't it? In life, we want to be like that. And if we can put ourselves in the children's shoes and always think, how can I enable this situation? How can I make it so that the child can make the decision rather than me? Obviously, as an adult, sometimes we have to make decisions about things, but wherever possible, even very simple things like, as I say, like what you're going to have to eat, what your resources are, maybe deciding where you're all going to go that day, or what you're going to take with you if you're going somewhere. We're going to the beach, or what would you like to take? Shall we? They might choose to take tigers. They might choose to take a kite. You know, you can choose. The child can choose those things. And actually, if you can sort of also spread that out to the families, that makes a really big difference. Because if children get to do things like choosing their own clothes in the morning, that makes such a difference and can make the families' lives a lot calmer and easier in the morning too. Anything like that, give the children the choice in the same way that you as an adult would want that choice. You wouldn't want me to come to your house and tell you what to wear in the morning any more than you would want me to come and dish up your food on your plate and give it to you and say, this is what you're going to eat because I've decided this is what you're going to eat, even though I know you don't like carrots, for instance. You know, you have to give children the choice and the respect and enable them to be able to make these decisions for themselves, especially, I would say, when they're outside or you're in bigger settings where you've got loose parts and you've got this really big, amazing engineering and construction going on. Let them just go for it and decide how they're going to use these resources. And it's quite amazing, actually, once you do that. You can just see the learning opportunities because the children are so proud of what they've been able to do. So I hope that's made sense. I've obviously gone on for a little bit longer than I meant to, but I've got a little tagline at the bottom here, which is start small and build it up. You don't have to hand over all the power to the children instantly, but start with small things. You know, which colour socks would you like out of your bag? Or I don't know, which umbrella are you going to use today? You know, those sorts of things, little tiny things like that give each child a sense of, yes, I can make that decision myself, and a sense of confidence. And then as they get older, obviously you can extend that. And when they get onto school, they'll hopefully be able to be a confident um, school age child that can make decisions for themselves and have confidence in their own decisions and not having to constantly refer to an adult for support, which helps all through life as well, doesn't it? So I hope that's made sense and I haven't waffled too much again. But what I'd like to do now, if possible, is if anyone wants to share any ideas of how they are able to support this sort of sense of independence or autonomy in children in their setting, or if you've got any questions or anything, please fire away. You can pop it in the chat, or you can just put your I don't know if Damon's muted everyone. You can unmute yourself or put your hand up and we'll ask you, you can ask a question. Has anyone got anything? Ooh, very quiet. Oh, I'm really sorry. I should have said I've put the Education Endowment Foundation link on there. Sorry, Lisa. That was the thing I meant to say at the beginning. This is where we get all our research from and all our data from. It's really interesting, actually. So if you're ever looking for, if you're thinking, how can I support a particular aspect of a child's development? If you look on there, they have data-driven evidence of which approaches work best. Particularly good for things like communication and that type of thing. So it's just really interesting. And it's for all age groups, but there's a section for early years. And as I say, the Padlet has information about, or not information, sorry, pictures that I've taken from pretty much all from my setting, where you can just see ideas, simple ideas of how I'm doing these enabling agency. And there's a really good link on there to a blog from Canada called Listen to the Children. Now, I don't think many of us could go to the extreme end that she's gone to, where it's just she's given over her whole outdoor area to just this massive construction site. As amazing as it is, but it's really interesting to hear her how she talks about giving children agency over their decisions and their constructions and their whatever they want to do, their experiments. Um, so
Yeah,
well,
I'll just
yeah,
elaborate a little bit on what you said there, Kim, with regards to the evidence store. I mean,
yeah,
you know, if you go and have a look at the personal, social, and emotional side of that in the evidence store, I mean, there is there is a proven track record that shows that if we can put these things into place, we will support the better development for personal, social, emotional. And I do agree with the agency as well, but like Kim says, I would say remember to start small, because the problem is sometimes we're very good as practitioners in doing that, but parents then, you might find that parents have issues at home and they'll be like, you know, they just want to wear this, they just want to wear that, whereas it's almost like the parents need to maintain some kind of, I would say, still have the control whilst allowing children agency. So it
mm,
might be, well, at home, if you were perhaps saying or giving advice to a parent, just say, you know, give them a choice of 2 sets of clothes. They're not going to rip the whole wardrobe out, which is going to cause you distress. For us, it doesn't matter as practitioners. We've got all the time in the world, and whereas parents don't have that. So it's almost about looking at what parents' boundaries are and giving them, making sure that they've got, you know, the boundaries still in place, but room within those boundaries to move so that they get that autonomy. And yeah, I definitely agree with that Facebook page, Kim. I follow them too. And
yeah,
the
great.
where you were talking about the sharing was very, she had a really good thing on sharing on there as well about, you know, how not to say, well, because you've had it for 2 minutes, it's somebody else's turn. That child may not have finished playing with that, you know,
Yeah,
and the other child has to learn to wait.
mm,
So, you know, they don't believe in timers. I know a lot of us might use timers for regulating play like that, but that will also come into feed nicely into the evidence in the evidence store for self-regulation and executive function as well. So things like that. But yeah, thank you, Kim, for that. It was really great.
no, thank you. Um, Sorry, Melinda's got a question. I love to give children choice, but what if I don't like their choice? For example, they want to wear a summer dress in winter. Um, that's a really good question, Melinda. I would say you can wear a summer dress in winter and you can explain to them that you can wear that, but it is a little bit cold today. Why don't we put some tights on with it? Why don't we wear a cardigan over the top, for instance? You know, you could wear you could wear leggings and a long sleeve top underneath and put your summer dress on the top. I'm I'm a
Mm-hmm.
grandparent of 2 girls who only ever wear party dresses all year round. So sometimes you just layer them up. So they've got the party dresses, the top layer, but they've got the winter clothes underneath. So I think children sometimes need to also experience things to understand why you're saying something, don't they? So um, if they said, "Oh, I want to wear this summer dress," and it's cold, you can just say, "Well, it is a little bit chilly today. Why don't you go outside in your summer dress and see how it feels?" And then they can come back in and say, "Oh, actually, it's a bit cold. I'm going to put a coat on." But also, I don't make children, for example, wear coats if they don't want to wear them. I give them that choice. So um, if it was tipping down with rain, I might say, I think it might be important that we wear a coat today, but I don't make them do it. But I do, it's slightly different in my setting because I have spare clothes for the children here in their little drawer, those things. So if it doesn't matter if they get wet, they can go and get changed, you know. I'm not too worried about that type of thing. But I do understand it's different for everyone. But you can still give children choice, is what I'm saying. I think that, but you can support them to make different choices. But or like Lisa was saying, you can say, "Oh, it's a lovely day to wear a dress today, but it's winter, so you've got out 2 winter type dresses," you know. So that the summer dress doesn't even come into the equation. Does that make sense, Melinda? Does that? Um, I'm just what I think what I'm trying to get at is put yourself in the child's shoes. Some children just don't ever want to wear a coat. They're just
Yeah.
really, really hot. And imagine yourself being forced to wear a coat when you didn't really want to, you know? Um, I think children are a lot stronger and more resilient than we perhaps give them credit for. And also they can make these sort of what we would class as, I suppose, sensible, um, uh, sensible ideas. They can come up with the idea that, oh yeah, maybe I do need to wear a coat. Or you can give them a choice of two coats, can't you? Would you like to wear your winter coat, or would you like to wear the raincoat? But it's just giving them choice, so you can. What I would say is, what does it matter if you want to wear a summer dress in winter? You know, you can put other things on, and it depends. If it's winter and it's snowing, and you're going to be outside in a summer dress, that's a little bit different to it's a summer dress but you're indoors. So I think you have to take each situation as it comes, but also enable as much as possible rather than making those decisions for them. Would you agree, Lisa?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, the thing is that it's about educating parents as well, and it's working alongside the parents to allow them to understand what it is you're doing, because the last thing you want is like, oh, there's pictures of them in the garden in the rain and they haven't got a coat on, and why aren't they wearing a coat? But it's about sort of getting the parents on board and getting them to understand, you know, the concept behind it, you know, giving these children this sense of self so they can start, you know, making those choices for themselves. As I say, everyone can always stay in control. You know, you can put those boundaries in place, give them room to move, but ultimately the adult still has the ultimate control. You know, like Kim said, choose which coat you'd like to put on today. And if you give them a choice, they'll pick one normally. But as I say, you know, we have children in our setting that go out and you think they'll be cold. They're running around. They're burning up lots of energy. Then their bodies are warm. So, you know, they do tend to know. If they're shivering, then you know, you can talk to them about how they're feeling, and that's part of bringing in that concept of, you know, you're then the teacher and you're then teaching them about their feelings. So going back to that evidence again, you know, looking at how if an adult can implement those kind of, like, whether you call them interventions or not, but it would be a really tiny intervention if you're going out and, you know, intervening in the fact that the child's shivering. You're teaching them something. You're teaching them the way to understand their feelings and understand the difference between cold and hot and all of those things. And that explicit teaching can come into that without pulling a child away from what they're doing. So, you know, and that will build on their personal social skills. So definitely, Kim, I do agree with that completely.
Well, it's a good question though, and I think we want children to have body autonomy, don't we? Autonomy over their bodies, because that's such an important thing for all sorts of stuff in later life, but safeguarding in particular. But yes, of course, sometimes you might need to make a choice. I don't know. I can give you a couple of examples that it might either horrify you or you'll be okay with. So yesterday it was raining here, and I have free flow all the time, and two of the children weren't worried about wearing a coat at all, and the others did wear a coat. It was their choice. Their coats are hanging on their pegs, and the two that didn't wear a coat, they were having so much fun running around, feeling the rain on their bodies and putting their arms out. And they came in afterwards and got dry, and they went to their cupboards and got their own clothes and swapped themselves over. Another example is a little one I've got who's only 18, 19 months, and she struggles to walk in wellies, and wanted to go outside but only had wellies with her yesterday. And so I just let her go out in her socks because eh, I feel like
It's
what
warm.
does it matter? Yeah, exactly. It's not freezing cold. She got wet socks, but it's no big deal to change the socks. I know that is different because I do, as I say, have the spare clothes here, so that's slightly different. Other people might prefer the children to come with a bag of spare clothes, but I have them here and I wash them, and so I've always got enough spare clothes here. But I think that you're right about the parents, Lisa. I think if the parents are sort of on board and they understand that what you're trying to do is support children to make these choices, um, then they're less likely to be concerned about it. And of course, obviously, you wouldn't do something that was dangerous if it was really, really freezing cold. You wouldn't expect a child to go out in a bikini or something, would you?
No.
No. But then you might say, well, that's great. You want to wear a bikini. That's fantastic. But bikinis are for indoors, you know, or not in the winter anyway. Do you know, that's a bit of a silly example, but that's what I'm trying to get at. But yeah, I definitely agree. It's just starting with very, very small things like choosing what they eat, which fruit. You can make a fruit platter, you know, rather than giving children a piece of fruit. You can, when you do your snack, you can cut your fruit up, make it look like quite nice on a plate, and then they take turns to pass it around and choose the fruit that they want. Just stuff like that. It's so simple, so easy to do, but the children can do it themselves. And I think most of us as childminders probably end up going to the shop with the children a couple of times a week because you're constantly running out of fruit and milk, aren't you? So you know, when you go, let the children choose those things. Let them choose which fruit. What would you like to have? Shall we have raspberries? Shall we have strawberries? You know, I can't really see a reason why that wouldn't be something that most people could do quite easily. But of course, we're all different, and we all have different ways of working, and we're working with different children and different families. So really, what I'm trying to say is just try to look at each situation and think, how can I enable that? I can give children choice to use those resources in the way that they want to use them. So if you go and look at the Padlet, you'll see there's pictures of, like I say, children building things, children playing with mud and water and that type of stuff. And that's none of that is adult led. All I've done is given them the resources. They're just there in the garden and they use them in the way they want to. And that's something we can all do, really, isn't it? Children don't need an adult constantly telling them what to do. And if we can just stand back and let children engage in those materials and the resources in the way that they want to, that's a really easy way to enable agency and to give them a sense of ownership and pride over what they're able to do, and resilience, because you know things change, things go wrong, they might want to rebuild things. So yeah, I mean that's a really easy way to give children choice. Has anyone else got anything they want to share about how they're able to enable this sort of sense of autonomy in children, how they share things or where children make decisions in their settings? Everyone's very quiet. I mean, Melinda came up with that really good question, but actually you could even take it to a much simpler thing than that, Melinda. Really, it could be just these very small things like which color socks are you going to wear, or enabling them to wash their own hands, that type of thing. I'm sure most of you might have done the dental hygiene course that was on recently, wasn't it? The webinar. So I don't know whether many of you have taken that on board and do teeth cleaning at home in your setting. But we have that here, and the children have bamboo toothbrushes. They come in all different colours, and they get to choose which one they're going to have, and then they write their name on the handle with a Sharpie, so we know which is whose. That sort of thing is so easy. It's the easiest thing in the world to have a toothbrush and buy a toothbrush for a child, isn't it? And let them choose which colour they're going to have. So sort of just starting off very simply with things like that is fine, you know.
If I can just send, if you want to see some things in action, if you do go back to the Education Endowment Foundation's early years evidence store, there are like little video clips at the bottom of sort of like each section. So there's a whole section on personal, social and emotional development, and if you go across, there's like teaching and modelling emotions and feelings, and teaching and modelling social communication. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there's kind of like evidence videos of these things in practice. So it's always good to refer back to that, because sometimes when we talk about it, if you can't imagine it in your head, if you go back and have a look at some of the videos, like Kim said, we all work in a different way, but you can pull the ideas from it. It might not be how you do it, but just like you can take the concept and the ideas and from it that way. So yeah, I mean, obviously the whole point of us having the hub and, you know, to try and keep these things going is the fact that we work in collaboration with the EEF as well. So, you know, please do go and have a look at those videos, because there will be something in there for somebody, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's a good idea. It is. I think when I first heard the term agency, I think it was when I was doing my degree
Yeah,
ago, and I thought, what on earth does that mean? I couldn't even work out what we were trying to talk about. So I know it can be a little bit confusing if it's new to you, but if you think of it as just supporting children. Oh, Kerry's got an example. Do you want to talk about it, Kerry, or?
Hi, Kim.
Hi, Kerry.
Yeah, it's something that we do here. I mean, day to day, each day, the children will talk about what they would like to do, and they get their choices throughout the day about their play, their activity, inside or outside. But something that we do at the end of the day is, particularly for the children that are in the next day, is we'll say, what is it that you would like to do tomorrow? And we listen to their suggestions, and if we decide that we're going to do something the next day, then, you know, we decide on it there and then. And then what tends to happen is when the children arrive in the morning, they come with parents and they're already talking about what they're going to be doing. Like the parents will say to us, oh, we hear they're going to be doing such and such today. So that's quite nice, because it makes them come in with a bit of a purpose, especially for the children who sometimes can be a bit reluctant. If we know it's something that they would like to do, it is a good way to get them through the door.
Yeah, no, that's a really good idea, actually, isn't it? Because if you know you're going to go somewhere or do something that was your choice, it's always going to be better, isn't it?
Exactly. They're sort of more positive, more keen. That's just an idea.
Yeah, no, it's a really good idea and a really simple way to do it as well, isn't it? Because you know, I suppose it depends what they want to do. They could ask to do something quite elaborate, but what sort of ideas do they usually come up with? Is it sort of a few of the same
Yes,
time?
it can be very simple things that they, you know, do quite often here, and, you know, the same sort of activities or resources that they like to play with. But the most recent one was, we said that we were going to have a day out. And what prompted this was they were in the playhouse and they were sort of jumping on each other, and we've got like a soft cube that they were bouncing off, and I said, oh, it's like soft playing. And I asked them all, I said, do you go to soft plays? And I was asking them all individually. And then we started talking about the soft plays that are in the area and sort of getting an idea who goes to where. And I said, oh, it'd be nice to have a little day out, wouldn't it? And then that sort of spiraled to, let's all have a day out somewhere. And then actually we've come round to the zoo now, so that's what we're going to be doing. So now that's kind of come from them, and, you know, they're looking forward to it. They know that we're going, and, you know, they're talking about it at home. So that sort of came from nowhere, really. It was sort of them leading it. So that's probably the most recent example.
Yeah, no, that's great, isn't it? Because that just sounds like a really lovely thing to do. And if you can just involve children in that decision-making process, it's so easy to do, isn't it? And to be honest, you can sort of curate the ideas a little bit, can't you? Because it might not be possible to go to the North Pole or something like that, but you know, you can, as you say, you can sort of suggest a range of things, like Lisa was saying earlier about, would you like to wear this coat or that coat? You can do that a little bit with your decision making for the next day, can't you? But no, I think that's absolutely brilliant. It's something I try and do as well. I mean, it's not all, it just depends, doesn't it, on what you've got going on that week. You can't necessarily always do things the next day, but I always try and take that into account. If someone says, for instance, two of the children want to go to Colchester Castle tomorrow, and they'd asked that earlier in the week, and I said, yeah, that's fine, we'll go. And so we're going tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, that's a really good example. Thank you, Kerry, because it's such an easy thing to do, and it gives children a sense of ownership and a sense of belonging as well. They belong in that in your setting, and you're interested, and they know you're interested in what they're doing, so they have a sense of agency over what's happening in their lives. It's exactly it. It's making a difference to something in their lives, and it's such a simple thing to do. So thank you, Kerry. Has anyone else got any sort of simple ideas of how you're enabling this with children, to give them choice over what they do, or where they go, or what they eat, or what activities they do? I can see some people I know up here. I could pick some people out. That would be a bit mean of me, wouldn't it? But I'm sure some of you be able to suggest things that you do with your children. I think generally speaking, in early years and the revised EYFS for a start, we're working much more towards a child-led experience in early years, rather than what we used to call a top-down approach, where the adult knows everything and the child knows nothing. So it's really good if we can sort of try turning things around a little bit, so that children are respected in that way. Shannon, thank you, Shannon. I always offer the children what snack we're going to have: fruit and then cracker or breadstick, etc. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, that's a really simple thing to do, isn't it, Shannon? You know, so they can choose what they're going to have for their snack. So do you put it out as a sort of selection, or do they have to choose first? How do you do that? Oh, okay. Kids are awake and unhappy. You don't have to talk, Shannon. That's fine. Yeah, choice in fruit. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think like a lot of us, I find that sometimes children take one bite of an apple and then they're full up, aren't they? So I'm a big fan of the buffet type selection of fruit, especially in the very young children. And as they get older and can manage more of it, then they have the sort of the whole apple or whatever. But yeah, that's a really good idea. Yeah, choice in fruit, and then your crackers or your breadstick or something like that. Again, it's such an easy, simple thing to do. I'm going to be introducing more self-serve with young ones, as I normally do with the old ones. Yeah, that's a good idea. Do you know, Shannon, when I started doing self-serving, I started it with the after-school snack rather than the lunch, and sort of gradually eased it in like that. So um, our after-school snack does tend to be a little bit more of a sort of a buffet type thing, you know. So we might have crumpets and some French bread or something like that, and then a choice of things to put on them. So we might have some jam and some butter or whatever, and then a selection of fruit as well. And I found that if it's put out like that in a sort of a spread like that, then and the older children are there as well. That really helped, because the older children were able to model what the younger children, what they needed to do, or how that works. And actually, I found that, as I said before, they do try a lot of different things that they wouldn't normally try if I just put it on a plate and plonked it in front of them. And it makes the whole meal time a lot more communal, and I really like it like that. But again, as Lisa was saying earlier, I know we all understand that we all work differently, and some of us don't have provide food, do we? Some of us have packed lunches and packed snacks. But if you do provide anything like that, it's just a really nice, easy way to sort of enable that choice. And if you're looking at it from a PSED point of view, it ticks the boxes for the making healthy choices, doesn't it? Rather than you giving the child always giving them the thing that you think they should eat, which is a nice thing to do. And also, it means you can try different types of food. Maybe that if a child always comes with a packed lunch, maybe it would widen their sort of scope of what they have. You know, you might have pita bread, for example, or you might have garlic bread one day, or something along those lines. That it's just slightly different, so it gets them used to trying different things. Okay, let's have a look. I do have a question about free flow for childminders. I always find it hard with free flow with being careful of seeing all the children. How do you make it work, or am I overthinking it? That's a really good question, Shannon, but it's actually in the revised EYFS, you need to be within sight or hearing. It's slightly different for childminders than it is for a nursery. So it's recognised that you might not be able to see, depending on how your setting works. You know, you might be slightly around the corner from the other children. You can't constantly see the children all the time. The one exception to that is when they're eating. They must be within sight when you're eating. So, for instance, at my setting, I have a conservatory, which is where most of the childminding stuff goes on, and that goes out into the garden. My garden has a slight L shape to it, so if children are slightly around the corner in the mud pit, I can't see them if I'm near the conservatory. But, well, this is a little bit of a helpful hint. I've got a mirror that the children paint on, which is at the end of the garden, so I can still see them because they're only in the mud pit. But I can see them in the mirror. But that's okay. You can do free flow. I would say you'd need to risk assess your own setting, wouldn't you? If it's a really massive garden with lots of places that children could get lost in, or hopefully not escape from the garden, but you know what I mean, or you've got a pond or something like that, you'd obviously have to make sure that the free flow was maybe restricted to the area that you felt was safe for them to use. Because if you've got to help another child, you've got to turn around and help another child with their shoes or something like that, you can't see the other children that are already in the garden. Or another child needs help on the toilet, you can't bring all the children in so you can help them on the toilet. So you just need to be able to hear them. So it comes down to risk assessing the whole idea of free flow, really, and the age of the children, I would say. But yeah, that's brilliant. It's all pretty safe. I'm worried about it's not seeing one child, so this answered my question. Yeah, I think without seeing a garden, it's difficult to say, isn't it? But you know, if that was I don't know, say for instance, a 4-year-old and they're playing in the sand pit, and you have to quickly nip inside and change another child's nappy. You can hear that child, you know that they're safe because the environment is safe and you've risk assessed it. So that's you have to take it again sort of on a case by case. It needs to be depending on the children and depending on the area that they're in. I know some childminders sort of fence off part of their garden, so that's like the free flow area near the door, and then when they're all out in the garden, then they open up the rest of the garden and the children can sort of access the bigger space, which is one way to think about it, isn't it? I suppose my garden's not big enough to worry about that. I can see and pretty much hear everything all in one place. But yeah, if you're lucky enough to have a really big space, you would just need to risk assess it and maybe decide how you would manage that. Yeah, depending on the age of the children, I would think as well. Yeah, but hopefully that helps. A lot of those things, when you think about it, if you go back to the revised EYFS, that clarifies it in there, so you can see more or less what you need to do. Yeah, it's slightly different for childminders. I know I've been on meetings before with nurseries and preschools, and they're horrified that we don't have to be able to see the children all the time. But it doesn't mean we're just ignoring them. We're not in another room. It just means that yes, you can just help that one child while the other child's in a different room or is outside. It's fine as long as you've risk assessed it and made it safe. I think we're coming towards the end of this now, so I just wanted to say thank you ever so much for joining us this evening.